Budget and Finance will come to order. Welcome, everyone. We begin with 2014-1031, sponsored by the Chairman, appropriates $9,043,300 from the undesignated fund balance and other sources to various departments and programs to balance their fiscal year 2013-14 operating budgets. May I have a motion to begin? Moved and seconded. Just so make sure that we know, in case we have questions, we're going to begin with an overview from Mr. Riebling in just a moment. But I see from hospitals, Jason Boyd is here, Chief Anderson's here from police, Saul is here from the law department, Tasha Kennard is here from Farmers Market, Mr. Sconey is here from Municipal Auditorium, Mr. Wall is here from the Election Commission, former Councilman Dozier is here for the Fair Board. Will Connolly, I think, is going to be Social Services is here. Do we have anybody from planning here yet? I know they're on their way because they have a meeting. Well, hopefully by the time we get to that, they will be here because obviously they're going to be here in just a very few minutes. Mr. Riebling, will you give us a brief overview?
Excuse me. Certainly. Thank you, Chairman Stein. Just covering these sort of hitting highlights, and then obviously any more detail, I'd urge you to, if I can't answer it, the department is here, but starting with some of the enterprise funds, specifically State Fair, Farmers Market, and Municipal Auditorium. As you recall, we did not include a specific appropriation for them in the budget this year, other than Farmers State Fair was given a contingent $200,000 appropriation, which they now have received through council legislation. And so the $200,000 or so for the state fair reflects some increased cost, but in that case, they also have some increased revenue to offset that total. Farmers Market is a request for about a $715,000 subsidy to complete its operations for the year for a variety of issues, all spelled out very well in Mr. Cooper's analysis. And then the same with Municipal Auditorium, which is requesting a $415,000 supplemental appropriation. Turning to some of the other departments, specifically, and all these, the ones that we just mentioned, the enterprise funds, and the ones we're going to mention would come from the general fund reserves, fund balance. First is $327,200 for the Election Commission. As you recall, a portion of this was about $175,000 of this was to open up the satellite office at the Fulton complex when the main, this was the agreement when the commission moved its main offices out to Southeast Davidson. And in addition to that, there was the supplemental appropriation that the council asked for of about $60,000 for some additional early voting sites. About $1 million would be appropriated for judgment and losses to cover a shortage in funds in that account, which is obviously used to settle claims and lawsuits against metropolitan government. $969,200 would for the police department, which is to cover salary and fringe benefit costs, a portion of which I believe are related to overtime requirements for special events. Chief Anderson is here to provide additional details. And then $5,227,000 is for the hospital authority. Obviously a large amount, but let me say that the bulk of that money is from two reasons. One is when the hospital authority completed its budget, its approved operating budget for the current fiscal year, it was under the assumption that the Bordeaux nursing home would only be open for half of the fiscal year. And obviously that home is still open and operational, and so they need additional funding for the operation of Bordeaux and Knowles for the second half of this fiscal year. And in addition, as part of the sale of the home or the privatization concept, which the council just approved, there's going to be some additional payments required to employees, sort of the employee transition payments, which are in excess of $1 million that have to be paid that also weren't budgeted. So that's the principal purposes behind the hospital authority. And then finally, there's two other appropriations that will not really draw from the general fund like the others. One is the $19,000 for the planning department for its Nashville Next consultant, and that will come out of it's a grant program whose name just escapes me. And then finally, $175,500 for social services, which again will be offset by revenues that are being generated from private contributions to those programs. So those are kind of a quick overview of the request. I should say that even with these appropriations, we are going to be well in excess of the reserve level that the minimum level that we try to achieve and maintain. We obviously always like to keep our reserves as high as possible, but we felt that these were all necessary and legitimate expenditures to close out this fiscal year. So that, obviously, any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you. Councilman Claiborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 4 questions. 2 of them have to do with the farmers market. In the analysis that we have, there is a $8,300 number for landscaping and a $9,800 for refuse collection. So my question on the landscaping, was that a contract deal? Were there resources within Metro government that it could have accomplished that?
Hold on one second. Let's get Ms. Kennard up to the microphone, and so you can ask her directly.
Okay.
For those of you that have not met her, this is Tasha Kennard, who I think this is her first visit to us, who is the new director of the Farmers Market. Welcome. Councilman Claiborne.
So under landscaping, $8,300, was that a contract? And if it was, I assume that it went through the process, normal process, but were there Metro resources that could have accomplished that? And since you have a number of landscaping operations at the market, was there ever any talk about in-kind donations or work there that they could have taken advantage of tax issues with? And under the refuse collection, is that something that Metro can't pick up, and why?
Well, thank you. Those are great questions. Again, my name is Tasha Kennard. I'm the new executive director at the Nashville Farmers Market. The first question is in regard to the landscaping services. All of the landscaping services were contracted through the Department of General Services over the past 18 months. And so we did use General Services manpower as well as their vendors to negotiate those rates and complete those projects. Currently, we're in the process of evaluating how we can find in-kind services for our landscaping at the market. As you know, we have merchants on the grounds who provide those services to consumers throughout Nashville, and we're hoping that we can reduce some expenses going into this next fiscal year that way. Refuse is also handled by Metro government. All of the expenses that you would see included in this resolution today in regards to the farmers market are secured through the Department of General Services at this time.
Okay, so the $8,300, is that one of our, what do we call it, one of the fees, internal service fee? Is that an internal service fee item?
No, sir.
Pardon?
Sorry. No, sir, it is not. It is the actual expense for those services.
Okay. Well, in terms of landscaping, we have Hands on Nashville. There's a lot of volunteer folks that are more than willing to get involved in helping out, and I just think that is a number that's hard for me to accept being on there when there are resources available in the community that could have done that. That's a number that I have trouble with. Second question I have, municipal auditorium. So Mr. Sconey.
Mr. Sconey?
There's $5,800 for temporary services. Could you tell us what kinds of temporary services that represents?
Yes, this is Bob Sconia, Municipal Auditorium. Those are our cleaning services that we're reimbursed through. We use temporary labor help to help us clean up and set up within the facility. And it's reimbursed through our events staff.
Okay, so that's in addition to your normal maintenance and care for the building?
Yes, we don't keep a full-time crew on hand to do setup and to clean up inside the facility. It's on an as-needed basis, so we use a contract through purchasing department that allows us to bring in people on a temporary basis.
Okay, so this is cleanup that would be after an event?
After an event, yes, and before an event for setup.
Okay, so do we ever look at rolling that into the fee for use of the auditorium?
It is. It's included in our rental that we do with a...
But we still came up 5,800 short, 58,000 short.
Yes, we did a budget, of course, without a supplement in there this year. We did line items, and some of these items that are ending up short, and these are the items that we will end up short in.
So the rental cost is not actually covering the actual work that has to be done?
There are some things that are just in general upkeep of the facility that isn't covered in your regular rental. No, you're correct.
Okay. And then my final question, and Mr. Cooper, I may ask you to help me with this. In your analysis, you say there's $175,500 to Social Services Commission for the House, Nashville, and Homeless Connect projects to be funded out of private contributions for these programs. I'm confused by that.
Will Conley is here. Could you come and describe the grant program to us?
Hi, I'm Will Conley with the Metropolitan Homelessness Commission. So we collect private donations to help people move into permanent housing through the House Nashville campaign and through some collaborations with MDHA. So I think that's where that $175,000 is. That's my understanding of that figure.
Okay, but we're giving to the Social Service Commission for these two programs $175,000.
Councilman Claiborne, hold on one second.
Councilman,
Mr. Cooper?
We're actually
Okay.
appropriating their money to them.
Right.
They don't have authority to accept and spend money without it being appropriated, and since it wasn't included in their budget initially, it has to be part of a supplemental appropriation approved by the council.
Okay, what I'm confused about when it says that these services are to be funded out of private contributions.
Right.
So I'm having a disconnect as to why we're using public money to pay for.
We're using their money.
Huh?
They can't spend the money they've collected
Okay,
without our approval. And that's
Okay,
what
so
we're doing.
these are private contributions that have been donated.
Correct.
And we're, okay.
We have to do it by law. This council has to give them the authority to get that piece of money.
Okay, I understand that. I'm just confused by the wording of this explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Will.
Yeah.
Councilman Tiger.
Okay, so just to follow up with that, have we accepted the private donations like we do from Fred's and Sam's and all these other? Do we officially accept the $175,000 and then are appropriating it?
Social Services may have the authority to accept donations. Some boards and commissions do have the authority to accept it. The funds just have to be appropriated to them.
So is there a magic list that says these do and these don't?
I know that Parks does, Libraries does. I'll have to check on Social Services. I don't recall any specific, grant acceptance resolutions coming through just for that purpose, but I can check into that.
Okay, if you would, that'd be curious to know why we accept some of these $900 donations for some departments and then $175,000 doesn't come to us, so fine. Mr. Chair, I've got questions for almost everyone, so should we just go down the list, starting with the election?
That's the only way to do it.
Okay, thank you.
What's first?
Election Commission. The
Mr. Wall?
Mr. Wall,
Let him
yeah.
get there first.
Okay.
Mr. Wall?
Welcome. The $60,000 for early voting sites, do we know what sites will be funded? How many and where?
Yes, there are 6 sites to be open for 4 days. That's in addition to the Sunny West Auditorium, which is open for 14 days.
Right. And do you know off the top of your head where those sites are?
Let's see if I can test my memory here. Hermitage Library, Bordeaux Library, Green Hills Library, Bellevue Community Center. Yes, we do. I'm sorry, I don't.
You've said the magic word.
No, countywide, I just want to make sure they're spread over the entire county, and those district council members that were hopeful for sites on or near their quadrants or districts. So if you could provide that for us for tomorrow night would be very helpful.
Yes, I will.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Solomon.
Just recite the floor.
Or as I call the Solomon Settlement Fund. How much do we normally appropriate in a given year for judgments?
Let's see, 1.93 million, it looks like.
And we're going to be almost half of that short this year. It's just been a bad year for accidents and...
No, if you look at the history of the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, the settlements and the judgments are fairly steady. They can spike up and then go back down again. It's more that we haven't replenished maybe as efficiently as we could in certain years. I think the Director of Finance looks at the reserves totally, not necessarily by fund, and I think that we could have done perhaps a better job, but there are other needs at the time, and so that's really what's happened. And
now, maybe for tomorrow, if you could give us that 5-year history of what these settlements have run.
Will do.
Okay, Chief Anderson on the police department.
Chief Anderson up, and Buck Dozier on deck.
Steve Anderson, Police Department.
Welcome, and thanks for being here. $969,000. How much of, give us a little bit better breakdown, salary and fringe benefits. Is this mostly overtime?
No, sir. As was said earlier, we're going to be over about 200,000 in our special events, and that's created by more and more special events coming online, plus the new normal, as I call it, staffing special events in a manner that, in an increased manner that we did not do in the past, and that's taken into account incidents in other places, Boston, Austin, Texas, and so forth. The majority of what you see there in salary and benefits we've attributed to training, but where we fall short is the increments that were placed in the budget and employee pay raises, which we certainly agree with, but those were approved after our budget was formulated. So as we trickle down, so to speak, and pay the officers already on board, that's about $2 million. We've absorbed part of it, but where we fall short is in our training budget. Our training budget includes the salary and fringe for the recruits for basically their first year. A while back, we moved that out of the precincts line item and put it in training so we could more accurately track what it costs to train a recruit. So we have 6 months of training and generally 5 to 6 months field training. So that the majority of that $900,000 is where that we need the money for the training. We're still recovering from the buyout, putting people on, and then obviously we're gearing up to open Midtown Precinct, Midtown Hills, which will take another 58 officers.
Okay, so I'm struggling, you know, when did the buyout occur, and we just underestimated what the training costs would be? We've got more people that need to be trained because we underestimated these various issues?
Well, the buyout occurred last fiscal year, obviously, but
right.
we're still putting people through training to bring new people on to replace those 52 people that did retire. And again, starting the process to bring on 58 officers to open up Midtown Hills. Well, we did not underestimate what training would cost, but on the other hand, we did not take into account the $2 million that we needed to pay out in increments in employee pay raises. So line items had to be shifted to make make sure that we had money in the line items to pay the present employees their pay raises, again, which we totally agree with the council's action there. But on the other hand, taking into account the total budget that was approved prior to that, that was $2 million that frankly we did not count on.
Well, I don't dispute, and I certainly agree that our officers deserve every cent that they get out there. Where in the process how could we have underestimated that for $2 million, I guess is my bottom line question.
Well, as our budget was set prior to going into the fiscal year, that was not included. That was to be absorbed within our budget.
So, Rich, was that just deliberately, was the $2 million just, they were told, or John?
When the council approved the substitute budget, if you will recall, after the mayor's budget was filed, the administration agreed to restore increments for employees. Well, that money had to come from somewhere, so departments were basically to absorb those costs. And Chief Anderson is saying that they absorbed about $1 million of that $2 million, but could not absorb
Still short,
it all.
okay, all right. One final question on the special events. Does the Convention and Visitors Bureau and Sports Authority and all of those entities that host special events, do they provide you a calendar of events for the next season? Yeah, I'm talking Titans and Predators and whoever else would fall in that category.
We can generally count on the Titans and the Predators, and we know their schedule. Other events come online, sometimes we don't know about. We had the Final Four, we had 2 events associated with that, as an example, that are city-sponsored events, so to speak, and it's necessary to cover those.
Sure. So the question, Rich, then, how can we better communicate from those entities that would have these events to the police department so that the budget can be closer to accurate at the time it comes to us? Or is there a way to do that?
Well, I mean, I think that everyone does communicate about as well as you can. There's just certain events that are just going to happen during the course of the year that you don't know are going to happen. I think, as Chief said, the Titans and the Predators and the big CVC events, the 4th of July and the New Year's Eve bash, we know about those, but there were some additional events with the Women's Final Four this year that were not anticipated as being part of it. There's a run and then some other event, it escapes me, that we felt because of the magnitude of that event need to be considered city events. And so there's usually, I think there is good coordination. You can always have better, but I think generally they come pretty close to knowing it. It's just that with the growth of the convention center and other things, there's a lot of events going on that sometimes you just can't plan for. But I think they do a good job of communicating.
So the 2 events with the Women's Final Four, I know we have to staff them, it's going to be a great event, but how were they overlooked in the process?
I think, there was just additional events that no one had really, that in the course of the process should have been brought to everyone's attention sooner, but it wasn't. Again, the race, and Chief, you may help me with it's a basketball dribble thing, isn't it? It's
yes, sir. It's an event associated with the Final Four. It's a basketball, I think I call it a basketball bounce. It's held there next to the arena. It's a youth activity, and then there's a run associated with the event.
Those 2 should have been brought to everyone's attention sooner. It just slipped by.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, Councilman Tiger. Councilman Hunt, your planning committee is not going to start at 4:30. Just, okay.
Welcome, Buck. Just give us an overview of what the reason for the overtime cost, employee cost are.
Overtime cost was because of, we have 7 people who work in operations, I don't call them maintenance because they set up and take down. 2 of them were injured during that time, so we were short. We had to bring in extra people, plus the fact that we had extra events this year that we did not anticipate, which was the good side because we brought in some more revenue. That's why that was that overtime cost was incurred.
So basically, Councilman Claiborne's question earlier, if additional revenue comes in, that doesn't net against the bottom line here. They have X number of dollars to spend, and if they have additional revenue, that just goes into the pot?
budget was for a certain level, and if they get revenue exceeding that, then to spend that money, they have to get, the council has to appropriate that.
Okay. So do we know what the revenue upward amount is at this stage? The offset revenue?
For this,
For this year that we're giving you money back to offset the additional cost?
about 230,000, I believe, somewhere in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, farmer's market?
Tasha, you're back up. Mr. Sconey, you're on deck.
Okay, welcome, and hope this first trip is a pleasant one for you.
Thank you very much for
Okay, you
having
can pull
me.
that mic down too if you need to. Okay. Obviously, those of us that love farmers market and the product you produce and the atmosphere, there's work to be done there. I'm sure we'll be hearing from you in short order as to what the turnaround plan is. Do we have a timetable?
We do. We are already working on the turnaround plan for the farmers market. We have developed an 18-month plan as well as supporting documents for the board's 3-year plan.
Will it be possible for the farmers market to be a break-even proposition, or do you expect to be subsidized?
We are shooting for self-sufficiency in 2 years.
Will that self-sufficiency require capital improvements and other infusion of funds to reach those levels?
It will. It will require capital investments as well as continued supplemental support for this upcoming budget year.
Okay, and talk to me a little bit about the utilities 96.6.
So many of the items that you see here in this resolution are as a result to underfunded budgets for these line items. That would include utilities as well as the janitorial and security services and maintenance services. We just simply did not have the budget appropriate to fund the operation of the organization.
You weren't here, so I can't yell at you for that. I guess Talia's slipping behind the column back there, because I guess that may be her being tough on you type thing. Well, I would just urge you to keep us in the loop in our committee structure and let us know how we can help you, because we do want that facility to be successful. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I do want to just add that I am just as disappointed in the amount of funds that we have to request for this appropriation as well, and we are steadfastly working on improving our operations and our cost savings at the market.
Okay.
And I remind everyone that some of these folks will be back to us next month for their budget hearings and can give us some preview of their plans. Mr. Sconey?
Hold on, I got one follow-up with Rich here. On the questions Councilman Claiborne had about landscaping and cleaning and whatnot, are they required to go through general services, or can we make services like the Sheriff's Community Corrections Program available to them? And I'll be asking Mr. Sconey that about cleanup, because the Titans event that was held a couple of years ago, the sheriff's crew came over to LP Field and cleaned up the parking lot and the stadium and didn't require any expenditure of government funds to do so.
As you may recall, the General Services was managing the farmers market through at least half of this fiscal year, and so that's why the contracts were done through them. And now that they're stepping away and we have the new management and all that, how they go forward, I think is really sort of up to them as to what they want to do. And if the sheriff or others are available to provide some services, I think that's something that everyone should explore.
We need to publicize that. Okay, Bob, how are your revenues this year?
We're going to be exceeding what we projected for this fiscal year. We projected 1.3 million. We'll probably have 1.4 million if everything comes through that we have planned for this last quarter.
So in theory then, this $415,000 shortfall will be $315,000 if we offset the additional revenue?
Yes, I included it. The 100. I've got it included in my figures if you appropriate that money.
Okay, so am I just making sure I'm right on my math here? Your 415 you're asking for, but we have 100,000 additional revenues, so in theory...
That's included though, so it is 415.
And it all has to be appropriated.
That's correct.
Okay, so the 100,000, we're still 415 short then?
Yes.
Okay, and how does that compare in previous years?
Last year, I sought a $188,000 a subsidy, and we used our fund balance to supplement the rest of it. And the previous year, we had a $43,000.
So we're going the wrong direction?
We are this year. I hope to be pulling out of that with the advent of an arena football team, which opens this Saturday. But it was hard for me to judge what type of revenue that they would, what I could project from them.
Okay. And the same thing, have you ever explored on temporary cleaning and services using the sheriff's department?
Yes, we have. And our clients felt very uncomfortable with that because there's so much equipment and that they bring into the venue, that they leave overnight. It did not pose well with them. And so we were starting to develop pretty much a bad image across the country with that move. So we felt that we needed to be with a good temporary service, which we sought out and found to help the convention center, and it's working out very well.
But we haven't charged enough to offset their costs versus what has been brought in?
Well, these are simple line items that we had to deal with and put in there, so they weren't really allocated correctly at the beginning. And it's difficult for us at the beginning of the fiscal year to know what all of our events are going to be coming up in the following year, because as you know, we don't have enough monies to finish out the fiscal year.
Okay. All right. Planning Department?
Mr. Bernhardt? Will, you're up next.
Mr. Chairman, the money that we're requesting is simply an allocation from our fund balance, from the APR fund, which is a charter requirement, and it comes in, basically it's a $50,000 each year. We did not spend all the money last year knowing that this is a 3-year project and we'd allocated some, so we have to get it reallocated from the council.
So this is just a technical issue there. It's no new money?
No new money, no.
Type thing. Okay. Thank you. And Will, I think we've asked you most of yours. This is all private, and it's just getting into the right place now. And John's going to tell us which departments we can and cannot do this.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Jason?
Welcome, Jason.
How are you?
All right, so I guess I'm behind times. We had planned to close Bordeaux in December, or Knowles in December?
When we initially started mapping out the transaction, obviously it's been 14, 16 months. We had hoped from a budget perspective that we would have it completed by that time and off of our books. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that was the budget that our authority board approved.
And so what slowed the process down?
I wouldn't say there was anything specific that slowed it. I think it was just us making sure that we did complete due diligence and coming up with the right deal. I mean, it's one of those that I guess it always could have gone faster, it could have gone slower, but I think given where we wanted to be and coming up with the right transaction, it's just the time that it took.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Maynard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a comment and then I have a question. This is for the Election Commission. My comment's for the body, and that is early voting starts April 16th. In 16 days, we'll have early voting. And one of the great things about early voting, we've had between 50 and 54% of our registered voters have taken advantage of early voting. Someone who's been involved in it knows how important early voting is because of this reason. That is, if someone comes there and there's some issues regarding where they're supposed to vote or issues as to whether they're registered, they can call the office while it's open, and then they can have those issues either resolved or dealt with during the time of early voting, whereas during the election day, because it's such, not chaos, but there's so much going on, if the person is a problem with their particular place where they vote or problem with their voter registration or something didn't happen, you can't correct it that day. So they have to do a, what's the ballot called? provisional. And so, given that being said, the scope of services at the Fulton campus site is different from the scope of services at the site on Murfreesboro Road. My question is, with the supplement that we're doing today, will you be able to fully staff the Fulton satellite when those questions arise, and will they have within their scope of services to deal with, adjudicate issues that may arise as a result of people, things going awry with their voter registration or with their voter ID?
Thank you for the question. The Fulton campus, as we call it, the satellite office, was originally set, in my understanding prior to my arrival, to handle voter registration only. All other issues were to be referred to Metro Southeast. There's a security issue. There are a number of things. For example, petition pickup and return could not be executed at the satellite office. It needed to go to Metro Southeast. So the degree to which we can expand those services will be really a function of how well we think it could work there, and from a security standpoint, can we ensure the security that we need to of the documents?
Okay, because people are creatures of habit, and we're used to coming to Fulton, and people still don't. I mean, we have to do a good job. This is not a criticism. It's just a statement of fact that people still think they can go to the Fulton campus and get full services as opposed to going to Murfreesboro Road. So I'm just stating a fact. The last thing I'll just say is that given that you have so many people on the ballot for these judge races, and knowing that we need to have sufficient machines, it's been my experience that at certain voting precincts, Cleveland Park being one, we had some others in North Nashville where we did not have sufficient voting machines for the lines, and especially when you have long ballots, when you have very extensive long ballots, and it takes a person on average 5 or 10 minutes to get through that particular ballot, the lines get extremely long, even though you may not have great turnout for an election in May. So I just hope that you're aware of that. I know you're aware of that. Just wanted to say that again, and how important it is then that we have both sites available to deal with these issues when they arise.
We understand.
Councilwoman Weiner.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. So my question, number one, probably should go to Rich. Given that the convention center books pretty far out, is there a mechanism in place that we can keep these events from falling through the cracks? That we could meet with Chief Anderson and the Convention Center Authority and you so that that may not happen in the future, so we have a better sense of our expenses?
Well, first of all, remember that the overtime budget for special events is a small portion of the supplemental request. So we're talking, I think Chief Anderson says about $200,000 of the number. Still a large number, but only a fifth or so of the request. All I can say is that we'll communicate to everybody that they need to communicate better, and we'll try to do our best to do that. But events do arise that people overlook or just show up fairly late on the calendar, but we will do our best to make sure that all the parties are doing that.
Okay, thank you. Saul, you're next. This is a pretty quick one. As far as the judgments fund, do we need to look at establishing some sort of baseline so that we don't run into this underfunding in the future?
I think it's good to, you certainly could, that's one option. Another option would be just to look at it from year to year and make sure that the government as a whole is doing well, and that maybe we need to allocate resources over here instead of over here, and knowing that better times are going to come, we can replenish the fund. So that was kind of what the option I think the finance director took, and I don't really have a problem with that. I'm just glad to see it's being addressed. So, but I understand your concern.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
And my last question is for municipal. So how far out are your events booked?
Generally, concerts and that are about 4 months out. Rehearsals and other items are all about 4 months out. But then when I have cheerleading competitions, they're booked 2-3 years out.
Okay, is that standard in the industry?
Oh, yes, very natural.
So 4 months
Very-
out is
Oh,
pretty
yes.
consistent?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next question, given that we know that we have these enhanced cleaning costs because we can't use Sheriff's Department, and I totally understand that, having worked NAM, but my question would be, are we going to revisit how we charge these events when they come in to cover those costs in the future?
Well, I would always love to recoup everything I can, but I do compete in a pretty open market nationwide, not only locally. As you know, concerts and that are very difficult in this town with Skirmahorn now in it, the Woods Amphitheater, the War Memorial Auditorium. Everybody's competing for the same events, and you have to be very price competitive and come in with almost with a pocketbook nowadays, and that's why we don't participate as much anymore in concerts, because you got to absorb the loss most of the time, and we do not have those funds available.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Councilwoman Moore.
Just a quick question, Chair. I just like a request from Mr. Dozier, if he could, I think this was asked before from Councilman Claiborne, if we could just a breakdown of the employee cost and overtime and security services, repair and maintenance, that's all I would need, if we get that breakdown.
Mr. Dozier, did you hear that request?
Yes, we'll be glad to do.
Okay,
He says
thank
yes.
you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. This question is for Mr. Wall for the Election Commission. And I've gotten this question from many constituents, and other council colleagues are wondering as well. When you came up with the 6 early voting sites, was there a reason that Southeast Nashville, the Antioch community, was not considered as an area that needed an early vote site?
Well, Councilwoman, nice question. I must tell you that the process at the Election Commission is the sites are actually voted on and approved by the commissioners. And I was a part of that discussion. I heard back and forth the debate that they were involved in is whether or not to have 5 additional sites for 5 days or create another site to give more sites and find 6 for 4 days. That was within the budget that the supplemental that had been approved by the Metro Council. So I think they tried to do the best they could within that framework.
So if I'm reading this right, it's about 10,000 for each site?
I'm sorry?
Because your appropriation is what, 60,000?
Yes, it is.
So it takes about 10, so if we were going to add another site, it would be roughly around 10,000?
For the 4 or 5 day period, that's correct.
For the 4 or 5 day period. It's a concern because it's a very, very large area of the county, and we're kind of left out. So what the concern is access. Given that the election commissions in the southeast complex off of Murfreesboro Road, was there any consideration in terms of having that also open as an early vote site?
It was, but again, the commissioners felt that this was the better way to go, the better option.
So do we have an opportunity to change this after this budget, or this is set in stone for another year? So if any other elections come up, well, next year, you know, will we be still left out in terms of having an early vote site in Southeast Nashville?
It depends on whether or not our FY15 budget is approved, because in general, I can tell you that we're asking for more early voting sites.
But the answer is, don't you decide election by election as to what sites that you use?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So you'll make a decision for the next elections
In the
prior
next
to that.
budget.
So the answer is, to your question,
Okay.
it's not locked in.
Okay, thank you.
We have 2 more people in line, and I will call on you. I will remind the committee, we are 45 minutes into our committee, and we have a full agenda. Councilwoman Gilmore, Councilwoman Gilmore, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Stein. This question was for Mr. Sconey, actually. If you could come forward. Thank you. I wanted him just, if he could speak to, it's my understanding that one time the municipal auditorium was actually, it remained in the black, but something with the parking spaces, by you losing that ability, it since kind of hurt that capacity. If you could just kind of explain that and explain, do you have any oversight over the parking and just how that works? Thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, we do not control any parking within our facilities at all. We don't have a parking lot, we don't control any, we don't enjoy any revenues from that. And it is becoming a major issue for some of our clients right now, especially like the Ohio Valley Basketball Conference, the Shrine Circus. They need parking for their decision makers and their VIPs, and we were utilizing the top of the MTA Music City Center, and we're not being able to do that anymore. They've got a new purveyor in there that's leased out everything, so we're on the hunt right now to find some other sources for just us to provide for our clients to do that. But we do not, we do not generate any revenue. It goes back to basically, we compete.
How many years ago did the parking garage come out from under you all?
It was long before I was there.
So about 20 years, right?
More. At least.
I guess with the MTA, so you're saying that you cannot use that space anymore?
It's a difficulty to lease spaces in there for, a temporary, like a night of an event or a couple-day run of event, like a Shrine Circus or an Ohio Valley Basketball Conference.
Mm-hmm. And do you think if you were able to find some, maybe, I know there's very little, but if you were able to find some surface parking space over there, perhaps that you guys could use, it would help bring in some more revenue?
It pleased the clients and make it a little bit easier to book them, definitely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Bedney.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a statement that I'm very upset about not having a southeast early voting site. When we sent that letter, we discussed right here that we wanted to have a site on the southeast. If the commissioners didn't get the message that we wanted a site on the southeast, I don't know, maybe we need to spell it out better on the later next time. I just wanted to be on the record making that statement. Thank you.
Okay. On 1031, those on the Budget and Finance Committee in favor of recommendation signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. 1031 is recommended. 1032, Councilmembers Stein, Maynard, and Lancaster approves a federal grant of $1,298,099 to the Metro Board of Health to enhance access to community-based care for low-income individuals and families with HIV. Moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. 1032 is recommended. 1033, Councilmembers Stein and Maynard approves an amendment to a state grant to the Metro Board of Health for bioterrorism preparedness services by reducing the amount of the grant by $15,500 for a new grant total of $848,800 and reducing the amount of required locally by $5,600. Moved and seconded. Councilman Tigert.
What's the reason for the reduction in the grant?
Moving money from one year to the next, right?
Moving money from one year to the next?
I think this is a federal reduction, John, is it not? This comes from the feds, Councilman Tigard, and they may have reduced that amount, I think is what it is.
Okay. Those in favor of 1033 say aye. Opposed, no. 1033 is recommended. 1038, Councilmembers Stein, Tigard, and Hunt approves an amendment to a lease agreement between Metro and the state for the lease of 102 acres of state-owned property located at 3000 Morgan Road that is used for a public park by allowing the state to construct and operate a communications tower on a portion of the property. It's moved and seconded. Discussion. Seeing none, those in favor of 1038 say aye. Opposed, no. 1038 is recommended. 1039, Councilmembers Bedney, Stein, and others authorizes the Director of Public Property to exercise an option to purchase 3 parcels of property located on Pettis Road for use as a Metro Parkland and accepts a grant of $190,000 from the Land Trust for Tennessee to be applied to the purchase price of $688,000. Moved and seconded. Councilman Claiborne.
Yes, what is the appraised value of the land? Was an appraisal done? Who did the appraisal? And
The purchase price would be in line with what the appraisal Metro received was.
Do we know what that appraisal was?
Well, the purchase price is $688,000.
But do we know what the appraisal was?
Do you know, Rich?
Do we not have anybody from Parks here?
Tommy was here,
He's coming forward. Welcome, Mr. Lynch. We're sorry you missed the lineup before. Maybe next time you'll get something in the next one.
I'm trying to stay out of the lineup, thank you. I don't know exactly, but I can contact Shane. I think John's answer is correct. I think it is the appraised value.
What we're paying is the appraised value?
Yes, sir.
If you could just clarify that for us?
I will definitely have you an answer, hopefully before I leave, if not by tomorrow's meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, the amount of money the city will be putting in will be less than the appraised value because the $190,000 is coming from the trust, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. Any other? Oh, Councilman Tiger.
Maybe I'll be the first to say how good Mr. Lynch looks today.
I wore the tie just for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other discussion on 1039? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. 1039 is recommended. 1040, Councilmembers Stein, Dominy, and Hunt approves an intergovernmental agreement between the state and Metro whereby Metro surrenders any claim it might have to some unused remnant right-of-way adjacent to Old Hickory Boulevard where it intersects with Lebanon Pike and accepts $36,750 as payment for the property interest. It's moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. 1040 is recommended. 1041, Councilmembers Bedney, Duval, and others approves a contract with the state for the resurfacing of 6.7 miles of Old Hickory Boulevard between Bell Road and Burkett Road at a cost of $848,250 with a required local match of $282,750. Moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. 1041 is recommended. 1042, Councilmembers Pridemore, Stein, and Dominy approves an intergovernmental agreement between the state and Metro for miscellaneous safety improvements along Gallatin Pike from Old Hickory Boulevard to Anderson Lane. Councilman Pridemore moves approval. It's seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. 1042 is recommended. 1043, Councilmembers Moore, Stein, and Dominy approves another intergovernmental agreement between the state and Metro for installation and maintenance of new traffic signals at the I-65 northbound and southbound ramps at Wedgwood Avenue. Councilmember Moore moves approval. Okay, that's second. Councillady Moore, whose bill it is, already beat you to it. Any other discussion on 1043? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. 1043 is recommended. 1044, Councilmembers Stein and Dominy approves a contract between the state and Metro for resurfacing of 2.4 miles of Woodmont Boulevard between Harding Pike and Golf Club Lane at a cost of $1,484,700 with a required local match of $494,900.
Chairman, I move for approval.
Thank you, Councilman Maynard, and Councilman Tigert seconds. Is there any other discussion on 1044? Councilman Tigert.
If ever a road needed paving quickly, it's Woodmont Boulevard, and I hope they get out there soon.
Anything else relevant on 1044? Those in favor say aye. I need an aye on 1044. Thank you. All opposed. 1044 is recommended. 1045, without objection, 1045 and 2046. 1046. I apologize. The next two can be taken together as they're on the same issue. Seeing no objection. 1045, authorize the Department of Law to settle the personal injury claim of James Allen Palmer against Metro for the amount of $50,000. And 1046, Councilman Stein, authorizes the Department of Law to settle the personal injury claims of Gabriel Hines and Colleen Hines against Metro for the amount of $197,500. Moved and seconded. Councilman Claiborne.
Do we know if the Metro employee who had the 2-day suspension, was that a suspension with pay or a suspension without?
Mr. Potter is with us.
Good afternoon, sir. It was without pay.
Good, thank you.
Any other discussion on 1041 and 1042? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. 1041 and 42 are recommended. 1043, Councilmembers Moore, Stein, and Dominy approves an intergovernmental agreement between, I apologize, I got confused myself. We move on to bills on second reading. 696, Councilman Claiborne amends the Metro Code to require the Director of Finance to submit an annual debt report to the council at the time of the mayor's proposed operating budget is submitted. Councilman Claiborne moves approval, and it's seconded. And Councilman Claiborne, you're recognized to talk about an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have an amendment. As I said when we deferred this 2 weeks ago, we're trying to incorporate all of the suggestions that have come in from different council members and other sources, give the finance department time to look at it. And so I think we have the bill now in probably the best form that we can get it, at least at this point in time. So I would move the amendment.
It's moved and second. Mr. Cooper, the amendment is different from the bill. How?
The amendment doesn't change anything major with the bill. It's still the basic debt reporting requirements. It just changes some of the phrasing. It's mainly just technical language to make it to where the finance department can accurately report the information.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, those in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, no. Back on the bill is amendment. Councilman Claiborne renews his motion.
Yes, I renew my motion.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor of 696 say aye. Opposed, no. 696 is recommended. 716, Councilmembers Gilmore, Stein, and Hunt authorize the Director of Public Property to accept the quitclaim of a 2.68-acre parcel of property located within the formal thermal transfer site from the Metro Transit Authority. May I have a motion? And seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. 716 is recommended. 717, Councilman Stein approves an agreement with Metro Arts Commission and the Country Music Foundation for use of the CMA Hall of Fame on Friday, June 13th, 2014 for the Americans for the Arts Convention. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. 717 is recommended. And 718, Councilmembers Stein and Lancaster approves an agreement between the Arts Commission and the Frist Center for use of the Frist Center on Saturday, June 14 for the Americans for the Arts Convention. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. 718 is recommended. Thank you all. We stand adjourned.